Dear students, I hope you are all staying safe and healthy. Today, the topic of our lecture is Gender and Ethics. We already know that we are situating at the ethical application area of the course. Now, among all the applied ethical issues, gender is one of the significant platforms where ethics can be well thought out. So, let us begin with the subject, concerns and matters of gender ethics. To begin with, let us clarify the objectives of today's lecture. The lecture will try to identify the differences between gender and sex. It apprises critically on gender-oriented practices and policies, and last but not the least, it illustrates and critically evaluates gender-related terminologies and issues. At the outset, let us discuss the definition of gender ethics. Gender ethics is comparatively a new addition to the field of applied ethics in philosophy. Ethicists consider gender as one of the substantial platforms which needs attention, inclusion, and action while making policies, programs, and strategies in a particular society. According to the idea and research of gender ethicists, human being has two identities while they are part of a society. The social or cultural identity is their gender identity, and the human bodily and natural identity is their biological or sexual identity. Gender as an ethical platform looks at the life of men, women, and intersex in a holistic way. Ethical decisions are the core of all social practices. No procedure, practice, global, local, or national guidelines can account every ethical dilemma that a particular society encounter in their day-to-day practices. Gender is one among those complex ethical issues. It questions how does the society and its intervention on behavior and role play constructs in human lives. More specifically, it addresses the constraints that need to be addressed to live in a particular society as a particular gender category. Gender ethics seeks participation, decision making, and changes in perspectives of humans by eradicating inequality, injustice, stereotypes, ignorance, etc. On the other hand, it promotes justice, rights, virtue, common goods, fairness, awareness, sensitivity, and so on. Let's try to understand gender from the perspective of gender ethics. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights, as stated in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights of the UN. Ethical behavior involves treating people in this spirit regardless of their gender. However, consciously and subconsciously, individuals and societies have permitted and tolerated the exclusion and denial of basic human rights through designating those outside of their circle as the other. We construct an outcast group when we search for and identify differences among us, whether they are rooted in skin, hair, and eye color, height, weight, gender, sexual orientation, ethnicity, religion, age, physical or mental disabilities, socio-economic status, education, residency, legal status, vocation, languages spoken, and accent. All these internalized prejudices and practices can lead us and the institutions we create to deny others the benefits we enjoy and justify our own over entitlement. One of the most common bases of exclusion historically has been gender. When we look at the picture of the slide, do we see any differences between these two toddlers? Can we differentiate who is the girl child or the boy child here? We can't. When we are kids, we are above all the social norms and responsibilities. Thus, without visualizing our universal body parts, it is almost impossible to distinguish between a girl and a boy child. And when the childhood ends, between a boy and girl child behavioral pattern changes, lifestyle changes, choices, preferences, and responsibilities change, along with so many other social factors that lead babies to identify and categorize themselves differently from each other. Then, what is gender? Biology or a social construction? Is it a static in the sense that it remains the same in all contexts throughout life, or does it change in the sense that it is subject to negotiation? How we relate to these questions is important for our understanding of cognition, of how we observe and hear and conduct. According to ethical perspective of gender, it refers to socio-cultural definition of men, women, and others. The way societies distinguish them and assign them social roles, therefore, gender is socio-cultural and economical variable or tool to analyze roles, responsibilities, constraints, opportunities, and needs of men and women in any context. Concept of gender helps us to separate natural identity of female, male, and other gender categories. Changing one sometimes causes change automatically to other because of socio-cultural determinants of men and women and others. They are attributed different qualities, behavior, and practices which are learned or perceived, socially and psychologically constructed, varies across cultures and communities, varies and changeable over time. Each society slowly transforms a male, female into a man or woman, into masculine and feminine, which is a product of socialization for particular social, economic, and political context. The gender identity of men and women are psychologically and socially created, which means historically and culturally determined. For example, as soon as a child is born in families and society began the process of gendering. Still, many of South Asian countries, birth of a son is celebrated. The birth of a daughter is not celebrated. Sons are showered with love, respect, better food, and better health care. Boys are encouraged to be taught to be outgoing, and girls are to be demure and housebound. Gender identity of man and woman develop from different institutions like family, education, media, religion, politics, legal, and so many other cultural institutions. On the other hand, sexual or biological identity of a human is created naturally and cannot be changed. This is how everyone is naturally created and assigned. It is universal how men, women, and different categories act and function bodily or biologically. So, sex is the visible or biological identity of humans. It refers to visible differences in genital and related differences in reproductive functions. Nature has created us that nobody, either male or female or other, is same, which reflects that nature loves the diversity. Like our five fingers, which are not same but equally important or valuable. It is important to recognize that the way nature has created male, female, and others, nothing is there with their rights. But every society prescribes different norms for girls, boys, and others, men, women, very differently, which determine almost every aspect of their lives and their future. So, the basic differences between gender and sex are: gender is socio-culturally constructed, such as how we are going to behave or talk, our attires and attitudes that vary from gender to gender, as well as from country to country, so as from society to society. Whereas sex is our natural and biological identity, means how we have been created naturally, bodily, and visibly, while our gender identity differs from time, country, family, and context. Our sexual identity is all same, that means it is universal. For example, according to our sexual identity, all women can bear child, but the performance of the mother varies from culture to culture or society to society. The responsibilities of a Western mother is very different than Asian or South Asians. So gender is variable and changeable. It is depending on the social needs or codes. But sex is unchangeable and constant. It is how and what we are born with. It is predetermined by the nature, and gender is socio-psychologically created, constructed, and internalized idea of humans in society and culture.